Welcome to AK Anime Explainer. Today is explanation of Soul Land 3, Legend of the Dragon King Part 244. Without any delay, start explanation. Was it a simulation? It was completely identical to the operation at the campsite and was rather amazing. In any case, there was a deep, massive crater beside him. The crater was so deep he could not see the bottom, for it was pitch dark down there. There were some unknown auras rising vaguely from the bottom which made his spirit shudder. He focused his inner sight but realized he could not sense his soul power as expected. It was as if his soul power had vanished from his body. However, he considered himself lucky that his bloodline vortex was still present while his blood essence power remained as exuberant as before. So, he was barely affected. Meanwhile, a shadow flashed past and the female major appeared by his side. There was hardly any difference to her attire. However, when he had a second look at her, he found that she looked quite different. She no longer had the stoic look on her face, but instead, she looked astonished. "How did you come in here so quickly?" the major asked in puzzlement. "My speed matters as well," Tang San asked in reply. The female major's expression returned to normal. She pointed to the chasm by the side. "Jump down." "Okay." Tang San leaped straight into the black hole without the slightest hesitation. Although he did not know what was at the bottom, there was nothing much to fear in this simulated world. How could he be fearful of falling to his death after all that he had experienced recently? Furthermore, it would not be that easy to die from a fall with his physical prowess. The major followed behind closely and leaped in as well. The surroundings began to turn dark, but Tang San's eyes glowed brightly. His eyes were shimmering with purple radiance. It was his purple demon eyes. The cultivation of the purple demon eyes was capable of elevating one's spiritual power. On the other hand, once one had achieved a certain level of spiritual power, one's purple demon eyes could be enhanced as well. Thus, Tang San's purple demon eyes had advanced to the third level. Although he had yet to complete the cultivation, it was supposed to be an accumulative process. Naturally, he would achieve success without much effort with the passing of time. It was truly a cavern. The walls around the cavern were uneven and not man-made. He dropped for about 100 meters before he was halted abruptly. His momentum was immediately reduced as he was caught in a net. With his purple demon eyes, Tang San could see circular holes of different sizes vividly after stabilizing himself within the net. Next to the net, the biggest of the holes was 10 meters across while the diameters of the smaller ones were at least 2 meters. The shapes of the holes were irregular, and it was difficult to tell what the holes were dug with. The female major got down from the net and approached a hole while waving her hand at Tang San simultaneously. Tang San held the long rod in his hand as he made his way over swiftly. When he stood next to the female major, the major said, "From now on, we may possibly be in danger at any time. You're to protect me from danger and continue to venture deep into the hole. The distance which you cover in the hole will be used as the result of this test. Do you understand?" "Yes." Tang San nodded. He crossed the long rod in front of his body as he led the way into the hole. The hole chosen by the major was about 3 meters in diameter. The hole was pitch black, similar to the rest of the place. Consequently, he could not see the situation in front clearly. Tang San squinted his eyes. He was not allowed to use his soul power, but his spiritual power remained unaffected. With great effort, he could still rely on his spiritual power's perception in addition to his enhanced sight from the purple demon eyes to see about 30 meters ahead. It was extremely difficult within such dim light. As it was, it became darker still when he ventured deeper into the hole, such that even his purple demon eyes effect was quickly reduced. Tang San walked fairly fast while the major followed right behind him. Tang San wished he had an infrared imaging device, so it would be more convenient for him to move about in such an environment. However, he could only rely on his own skills right now. As it was, the alloy rod had its own use as well. He relied on the contact between the rod and the walls on both sides to determine the safety level in his surroundings. All of a sudden, there was a gush of airflow from the front. Tang San raised the alloy rod in his hand and waved it at the surging airflow. At the same time, His right foot took a step back while he used his body to shield the Major behind him. Poof! A soft thud was heard as Tang Wulin struck something. He used his purple demon eyes to take a close look and found that it was a living creature similar to a bat. It was not overly large, but the impact felt was quite intense. He estimated it to be about 100 kilograms. He did not feel a thing, but another person would have fallen from the impact. The bat-like creature did not die after being struck by his rod. On the contrary, it shrieked and recoiled before it pounced on Tang Wulin again with its foreclaws outstretched to grab Tang Wulin. Fortunately, Tang Wulin was not caught off guard. In response, he poked the long rod squarely against the bat's body. This time, he used more force. Poof! A soft thud was heard. The bat-like creature was blasted away by the prod. In the next moment, it exploded in mid-air. Tang Wulin's attack was purely based on strength. He had such good control of his strength that he could focus and exert his power via the rod. His strength was channeled into the creature's body through the long rod and was consequently blasted away. The female major behind him raised her brows, but Tang Wulin could not tell her expression in the dark naturally. He paused for a moment before he continued to walk forward. He squatted next to the bat's carcass to take a look when he passed by. Tang Wulin discovered in astonishment that the bat's carcass was shrinking rapidly before it disappeared altogether. There seemed to be some form of energy dissipating in the air after it vanished. Was it not made of real substance? Tang Wulin frowned slightly as he recalled how the bat was crushed earlier. There was no blood. On the contrary, it felt as if a ball of energy exploded. However, the energy did not benefit him and would not strengthen his soul ring's spiritual energy, unlike the Spirit Ascension platform. Was it specially made for the test? Tang Wulin continued to advance, slightly puzzled. He felt the airflows coming from the holes. There was more than one this time. In fact, a few gushes of airflows surged toward him simultaneously. Tang Wulin channeled his strength into the long rod with full concentration while he swayed the tip ever so slightly. A band of shadows formed from the swift movement of the rod to enshroud the airflows. While he was waving the long rod, he stood there firmly and remained immovable like a mountain. Poof, poof, poof. 3 soft thuds were heard when the 3 bat-like creatures exploded. Just like before, the carcasses began dissipating slowly on the ground after they were smashed. He did not pause but continued to advance. The bats appeared in succession. At times, there was only one. Sometimes, there were as many as 6 to 7 of them. They almost filled the entire cavern's tunnel with their large bodies. However, none of the bats could break past the siege of Tang Wulin with his long rod. The bats were crushed and smashed in due course. Light gradually shone through as they continued to walk forward for another 100 meters while the number of bats became fewer as well. It was not exactly bright, but it was at least better than before. The path turned a left corner and reached its end. Tang Wulin had only managed a few steps after the turn when he suddenly stopped. He expressed shock simultaneously. The place was similar to a cavern. It was massive and occupied an area comparable to a stadium. On the other side of the massive cavern, there were hundreds of holes with different sizes on its massive wall. The cavern's height was about 100 meters while there were hundreds of fork-clawed bats flying and flapping inside the cavern at present. More bats were coming out from the opposite wall of the cavern, while the light was also shining out from the holes. Radiance shone faintly throughout the cavern, but it was enough for Tang Wulin's purple demon eyes. So the test was to defeat the bats. Tang Wulin's gaze shifted slightly. The major was standing by his side at the moment. She suddenly looked up and smiled at him. This was the first time he saw the major smile. He felt rather uneasy that the smile seemed to be harboring a malicious intention. Then, the major spoke to him softly, "Please protect me." She suddenly dashed straight into the cavern before she even finished her sentence. The corners of Tang Wulin's lips twitched once. Was this the legendary anthropic challenge? He was lamenting in his heart, but he did not slow down at all. He tiptoed closely behind the major. The four-clawed bats in the air gave out a series of shrieks the instant they sensed the presence of intruders. One of the bats descended from the cavern's roof while the others pounced on Tang Wulin from all directions. The Major acted as if she could not see the bats and ran headlong toward the center. Tang Wulin brandished the rod in his hands like a spear. With every stab, a four-clawed bat exploded in the air. The shadow of the rod flitted around the Major, and not even a single bat was able to get within 2 meters of her. With every passing moment, the Major's eyes grew more shocked. She had seen her fair share of new recruits who came here to be assessed. There were great marksmen who were able to take charge of the entire situation, and there were those who relied on dexterous and masterful controls of various soul weapons to overcome the challenges. However, those that relied on their own bodily strength and battle experience to take protective measures at close range were few and far between. Naturally, she had her own reasons for choosing to assess Tang Wulin herself. After she had guided Tang Wulin to the first lieutenant, she obtained the security footage of the mountain's perimeter. She saw how Tang Wulin brazenly climbed the mountain and came to the barracks. Too fast. That was her first judgment after she saw the recording of Tang Wulin. He was more than 3 times faster than when she first came here. This fellow seemed inhuman. Without using any soul power, he had stabbed into the thick ice with his bare hands. The final climb was undoubtedly the most shocking part of his endeavor. Curiosity had made her come to assess Tang Wulin personally this time. Under normal circumstances, the contents of the assessment would have been briefly explained to the recruit before it began. However, she did not do so this time. Also, after they arrived, she should have moved forward slowly, but she chose to run. She wanted to see just how skillful this new recruit was, so she increased the difficulty of the assessment on purpose. However, the fact that Tang Wulin's strengths were not simply explosive power was obvious. The force from the four-clawed bat's advances could reach up to 500 kilograms. It was not something that could be easily blocked even by 3-ringed or 4-ringed soul masters with exceptional physical strength. Yet, when faced with Tang Wulin's blows, they were reduced to carcasses or puffs of air that quickly dispersed. By the time the Major ran to the center of the cave, more than half of the four-clawed bats had already been killed by Tang Wulin. Even so, Tang Wulin had noticed a problem. These four-clawed bats were tough and unafraid of death. They had no notion of fear. So many of their companions had already died, but they still attacked madly. Their bodies were filled with bloodlust. Even soul beasts would not do this. Their attacks were very determined, and Tang Wulin could only see cruelty in their eyes. There was no sign of terror, fear, or timidity. What kind of creatures were these? Were they created by the Blood God Army to increase the assessment's difficulty? While immersed in his own thoughts, he killed most of the bats that pounced at him. As the number of dead bats increased, even within the dim light, Tang Wulin could see wisps of air rising and gradually gathered together. Then, they drifted toward the holes. Tang Wulin turned to look at the Major. That's it? A smile reappeared at the edge of the Major's lips. You think too much. At that exact moment, a low growl suddenly echoed through the cave. Shortly after, from a medium-sized cavern, a massive bat flew out. It was more than 2 times larger than the previous bats, and it had 6 claws under its belly. It spread its wings and let out a sharp cry. The sound seemed to send ripples through the air. Tang Wulin's eyes focused. A sonic attack. He quickly unleashed his spiritual powers. He knew very well that this sonic attack was not something that he could block simply by covering his ears. At the same time, he reached out and pulled the Major into his arms, supporting her waist with his left hand. Golden light burst out of his eyes. Being held so close to Tang Wulin, the Major could not see the golden light coming from his eyes. Within Tang Wulin's firm, warm embrace, the Major felt her heartbeat increase instantly. However, the anticipated sonic shockwave did not reach them. It was as if it had been blocked by something. The 6-clawed bat in the air howled shrilly. It suddenly retracted its wings and shot at Tang Wulin like an arrow. It continued to shriek as it ceaselessly attacked Tang Wulin with sonic waves. Tang Wulin snorted. He focused his gaze and 2 beams of light shot out from his eyes like purple lightning. At that moment, the Major had just happened to raise her head and saw the purple flash which burst from his eyes. The six-clawed bat let out a high-pitched screech. Its pouncing body immediately paused, and Tang Wulin leaped into the air. His left hand still clung tightly to the Major while he lashed out with the metal rod in his right hand. The six-clawed bat was truly tough. Even under Purple Demon Eye's spiritual attack, it could still react. It extended its wings once more and slashed at young Wulin's metal rod. Its six claws were clearly larger than the four-clawed bat's. Bam! The six-clawed bat's body that was more than 2 meters long was sent flying. It was not so different from the four-clawed bats before. While the female Major stared in bewilderment, its body exploded in the air with a loud boom. It turned into countless fragments and scattered everywhere. This? Did he just destroy a six-clawed bat without using any soul power? The female Major felt as if her brain did not have the capacity for this. However, Tang Wulin did not take any notice. He loosened his arm around her waist and said apologetically, "I'm sorry if I've offended your modesty. I didn't mean to. It was because of the bat's sonic attack. If you were too far away from me, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to guarantee your safety." The Major said nothing. She looked at Tang Wulin a little differently. The curiosity that was already there intensified. In the beginning, she thought that Tang Wulin was arrogant since he picked a rod as his weapon, of all things. However, when she saw Tang Wulin destroy the six-clawed bat with one strike, this notion of hers vanished right away. With his close-quarter fighting skills, he had basically passed the assessment of strength. However, the Blood God Army's assessment was not as simple as a test of strength alone. The more important aspect was one's personality. There were not many in the Blood God Army, but they were truly loyal officers that would always have each other's backs. The reason they required the new recruits to protect another person during their assessment was that they wanted to test if they would sacrifice themselves for another in a perilous situation. However, this could only be tested under actual perilous situations. If there was no danger, how could they test this? Hence, since the Major could not stop the assessment midway, she chose to stay silent. The six-clawed bat was killed and the four-clawed bats that lingered around the cavern for a few moments finally made themselves scarce. However, their moment of peace only lasted briefly. 3 massive six-clawed bats crawled out of the cavern. 3 bats. Their power was not simply 3 times that of a single bat. These creatures not only resembled bats in appearance but also had similar combat styles. They possessed great strength in battle and were skilled in synchronizing their movements with each other. Let's see how he's going to handle this now. As the Major was anticipating the battle, Tang Wulin was already on the move. This time, he did not wait passively for them to attack. Without the threat of the four-clawed bats, he no longer had to worry about the Major's safety. That was why when the 3 six-clawed bats crawled out of the cavern, Tang Wulin immediately sprang into action. The metal rod in his hand suddenly turned into a black shadow. With a deafening explosion, it flew straight at one of the six-clawed bats. At the same time, he took a running jump and brazenly leaped at the second bat. The metal rod was the first to hit its target. With a loud crash, the six-clawed bat in the cavern was instantly destroyed before it could even crawl out of it. The other 2 bats had barely poked their heads out when Tang Wulin was already upon one of them. He formed a fist with his right hand and punched the six-clawed bat. The bat had just crawled out of the cavern, so it had barely stabilized its foothold and could not dodge it. All it could do was lash out at Tang Wulin with its 6 claws. 6 against 1, it was a fierce standoff. However, at that point, Tang Wulin had a little technique prepared. He bent his legs and tapped on 2 of the bat's claws with the tips of his toes. Then, he pulled his body back and evaded the six-clawed bat's attack, landing his punch mercilessly upon its head. Boom! The six-clawed bat's body shattered. Tang Wulin relied on the momentum to do a somersault and descended from the skies. As he fell, he reached his left hand out in the direction of the metal rod which he had tossed. The controlling crane capturing dragon. Even without the support of his soul power, the blood essence vortex within him still spun at high speed. He had also unleashed his controlling crane capturing dragon, and the rod suddenly flew back to his hands. The other six-clawed bat was extremely crafty. Rather than attack him, it pounced at the Major. The Major stood there unmoving, but she frowned. Although Tang Wulin had displayed extremely powerful abilities, if he was just a reckless man who only cared about fighting and did not care about his comrades, they would have no use for him. Just then, a black shadow flashed before her eyes. With a soft thud, the six-clawed bat, almost upon her by then, was impaled by the long rod from the side. It was nailed into the rock wall far away. The instant the metal rod hit the rock wall, the terrifying energy erupted. It shook the six-clawed bat's body until it shattered. While the Major was still staring at this scene with her mouth agape, Tang Wulin had already returned to her side and stood still there. A black shadow shot toward Tang Wulin as quick as lightning. It did not look very large, but it was long, like a serpent with a row of little claws under its belly. When it had almost reached Tang Wulin, it suddenly opened its jaws and made to bite him. This creature came very swiftly. It had almost reached Tang Wulin when he tossed his metal rod out for the second time and hit the third six-clawed bat. Of course, its target was not Tang Wulin, but the Major. Tang Wulin was fast enough to shield the Major with his own body. However, the metal rod was not in his hands right now. The creature's open jaw was more than a meter in diameter. There were rows of sharp, grotesque teeth inside its big mouth, but what was even more terrifying was that it stuck its tongue out at lightning speed and stabbed at Tang Wulin like a lance. If he dealt with the tongue, he would not be able to deal with the jaw. He had only hastily managed to shield the Major, so no matter how he looked at it, he would not be able to react in time to block this creature's attacks. At this critical moment, Tang Wulin reacted in a way that even the Major did not expect. Appearing as though he had slipped, his entire body fell to the ground. Not only that, he swept at the Major's feet with his right hand and made her fall backward as well. The Major exclaimed in shock. She could not control her own body, but she saw that the lance-like tongue missed her by a hair's breadth above her nose. Though she gasped, she did not close her eyes. This was a quality that was necessary for an outstanding soldier. She turned to look in Tang Wulin's direction. She saw that as Tang Wulin fell backward, he supported his body with one foot while he kicked upward with his other foot, landing the blow on the creature's chin. The power of his kick was so terrifying, it forcibly shut the creature's mouth upon impact. Its chin collided with its upper jaw with blinding speed. With a thud, the creature's extended tongue was severed by its own jaws. Not only that, Tang Wulin's strength even shattered its mouth full of steel teeth. The teeth came spattering out of its mouth. When Tang Wulin kicked out, he did not forget to pull on the Major's feet. The Major only felt a gentle force on her legs which stabilized her the instant before she was about to hit the ground. Tang Wulin was already getting back on his feet. He supported her back with his right hand and lightly tapped on the ground with his left. Without exerting too much force, he was standing upright again and brought her along with him. All this was accomplished while they caught their breath. Tang Wulin's movement seemed as natural as the clouds and smooth as flowing water. He did not appear rushed in the slightest. As a result of a single kick, the creature had bitten off its own tongue, shattered its teeth and its body was sent flying upward. Tang Wulin tapped the ground with the tips of his toes and rose into the skies. He quickly ran in the direction of his metal rod while he held the Major in his arms. The Major had only just broken out of her stupor. However, there was only one thought that was going through her mind: he can even do that. A series of shrill howls came from the cavern. The giant serpent's body, which was sent flying in midair by Tang Wulin's kick, suddenly froze. Shortly after, from the largest opening, out came a huge claw which suddenly grabbed the serpent's body. It jerked backward with great force and the strange serpent disappeared amidst the wails. Tang Wulin had just dislodged his metal rod from the wall, and his expression was grim. What was that? The size of the claw was more than 6 meters in diameter. If he judged it by normal standards, the owner of this claw could definitely not have crawled out from these openings. Also, this was the first time that he truly felt threatened. He pulled the Major and placed her behind him. Tang Wulin extended the rod in front of him as his eyes scrutinized the openings. After a brief pause, the entire cavern suddenly started shaking slightly. Then, mist suddenly came bursting out from all the burrows. Shock flashed across the Major's eyes. She clearly knew what this creature was. However, she clearly did not imagine that such a thing would appear in this assessment. The dense mist was yellowish in color. As it surrounded them, Tang Wulin felt as if the atmosphere in the cavern suddenly changed. The temperature remained unchanged, but there was an unstable vibration putting pressure on them. What was this? He did not rashly launch into an attack. Instead, he observed calmly. Since it made him feel threatened, this thing's combat strength would definitely not be a laughing matter. The mist quickly condensed and a massive figure appeared. It was a monster which Tang Wulin had never seen before. It had a giant dragon's head, but its body was like a hill, covered in dark green scales and supported by 3 legs. Its formidable upper body was clearly brimming with power. Its arms were especially long, and its 2 sharp claws were exactly what Tang Wulin had seen just moments ago. Every claw was more than 5 meters wide. It dragged a huge tail behind itself and had 4 eyes which flickered with a blood-red glow. The aura its entire body exuded was especially vile. That is Bian. Be careful, the Major softly advised. Bian? What was that? Other than its name, the Major's warning had no information for Tang Wulin. However, it was better than nothing. For a monster to have its own name and surname, it was obvious that it would not be that easy to deal with. Tang Wulin lowered his voice. Brace yourself against the cave wall here and don't move. I'll deal with it. As he said this, he had already stridden forward and charged right at the monster. This monster was absolutely massive. It looked to be more than 40 meters tall. Among all the soul beasts of the continent Tang Wulin has seen, it was second only to the Overlord Dragon. However, he was currently unable to use his martial soul, and he had no way to summon the Overlord Dragon. Otherwise, it would have been a nice option to fight this creature with it. Compared to this colossal Bian, Tang Wulin appeared tiny and insignificant. With a great leap, he shot straight up like an arrow, stirring the air as he ascended. He raised the long rod in his hand and smacked Bian with it. The Major stood in a corner. While she witnessed Tang Wulin's charge, her heart shuddered slightly in that instant for reasons unknown to her. Not everyone had the courage to charge at a monster with Bian's rank. This was especially true when it was the person's first encounter with it. Bian growled furiously. Its 4 eyes lit up like a ball of fire. It opened its mouth and dark purple flames shot toward Tang Wulin. The Major instinctively shut her eyes. She truly did not want to see Tang Wulin being burned to ashes amidst that deep abyss demon flame. For ordinary soul masters without any equipment, when they were faced with Bian's deep abyss demon flame, there was no other possibility other than melting instantly and turning into wraiths. However, in the next instant, the sound that reached her ear was Bian's furious roar of pain. She quickly opened her eyes. The Major saw with shock that a golden figure had already charged onto the top of Bian's head. She would never forget this shocking scene. Bian's massive body flew sideways toward the faraway cave wall. It crashed roughly and bounced off before finally landing on the ground. Tang Wulin descended from above and tossed the metal rod away. He had no other choice. This alloy metal rod was supposed to be very tough, but it had bent and could not be used anymore. Currently, Tang Wulin was covered in golden scales. The golden dragon claws protruded from his hands. For circles of golden rings rose from under his feet and circled rhythmically around him. This was golden? Soul rings? No, it was impossible. It was impossible for humans to be able to utilize their martial souls here. The Major was completely stupefied. Then, she saw Tang Wulin leaping again with a speed that was at least twice as fast as the last time. He looked like a golden cannonball as he shot straight toward Bian. Bian got up from the ground. The strength of its body was also shocking. Tang Wulin had relied on his golden dragon body and domineering golden dragon body to withstand its abyss demon flame as he charged toward it. That was how he caught it off guard and sent it flying. There was an obvious dent on Bian's skull. Tang Wulin had hit its head with his metal rod just now. However, Tang Wulin was a little disappointed. If he had used his golden dragon spear just now, Bian would not just be sent flying. A pair of giant dragon claws slashed at Tang Wulin. Ban howled furiously. The scales on its body shone with a dark green glow. Even in their world, it was a tough existence. Nevertheless, it was injured by a mere puny human. It turned wild with insanity. The terrifying aura made the air quiver. Roar! At this very moment, Tang Wulin let out a formidable dragon's roar. The third golden soul ring on his body shone brightly, and a giant golden dragon's head burst forth from his body. Ban's mad and furious howls were surprisingly suppressed in an instant. Shortly after, the dragon's head charged outward. Tang Wulin shoved forward with the golden dragon roar, followed by the golden dragon soars to the heavens. Boom! The golden light and the dark green light collided mercilessly with each other. Tang Wulin halted abruptly in midair before he was sent flying toward the cave ceiling, while Ban rebounded toward the faraway cave wall. At this very moment, a beam of golden light shot toward Tang Wulin like a lightning strike, as if it wanted to impale heaven and earth. It caught up to Ban in midair in the blink of an eye. Ban instinctively raised its huge claws to block it. However, the golden light went through its claws and pierced directly into the center of its 4 eyes. Tang Wulin was Tang's sect's direct disciple. Although his golden dragon spear might be slightly big, its precision could not be doubted. A shrill wail came from Ban. Just then, clouds of dark green air gathered around the golden spear with blinding speed. They were forcibly pulled toward it. Tang Wulin descended from above. His chest was heaving intensely. The battle had seemed brief, but he had exhausted his strength during the past few skirmishes. He felt as if he was about to faint from exhaustion. From the collision just now, Ban's strength was completely out of Tang Wulin's expectations. Ban's full strength was at par with Tang Wulin's. They had collided with full force. If it were not for the golden dragon roar which had shocked his opponent, Tang Wulin reckoned that it would have been impossible for him to remain unscathed when he followed up his attack with the golden dragon spear. Tang Wulin's feet touched the ground. On the other side, Ban's colossal body shuddered violently. It wanted to break free from the golden dragon spear, but it seemed impossible given its current circumstances. The dark green airflow colored the golden dragon spear in a dark green hue. However, Ban's gigantic body began disintegrating until it completely shattered in the end. The golden dragon spear shone with golden light. All evidence of the dark green color vanished. In the next moment, the golden dragon spear had returned to Tang Wulin's hand. Tang Wulin felt a gush of pure energy entering his body. The energy could not be used to replenish his soul power. Instead, it made his bloodline soul rings shake tremendously, and they began swirling at an accelerated pace. There were obviously pure essences within his blood essence, as he had felt the same sensation when he was absorbing the Golden Dragon King's essence after he broke through the Golden Dragon King's seal. Although the volume was much less, it was extremely pure energy. Although he knew that it was only a simulation, Tang Wulin was still shocked. With his current body strength, it was not an easy feat to feel his own blood essence power increasing. The Major had been speechless for a long time. She stared at Tang Wulin's back with lifeless eyes. Overpowering Ban? Close-quarter combat. The mysterious golden soul rings, and his monstrous strength. Was this fellow truly human? At this moment, another dark green figure shot out of the central opening and hung in mid-air. Tang Wulin had a slight frown. It seemed like there was no end to this. However, he was now confident. The golden dragon spear's feedback had instantly restored his blood essence power to its peak condition. It might even have increased it. Compared to Ban, the dark green figure was clearly much smaller. It looked to be only 2 meters tall, slightly taller than an ordinary human. It had a pair of special wings on its back. They resembled bat wings, but their bone structures were obviously larger. The bones were not covered with typical skin. Instead, it was covered with dark green scales. Her body resembled a human female, but her features were distorted. Her buttocks were huge, so were her breasts. Her eyes burned with gloomy greenish flames. Her waist was small, which was out of proportion with her huge buttocks. Sharp spikes covered her hands and feet. Tang Wulin squinted his eyes slightly. He did not feel any threat from the monster. However, in the depths of his mind, from the deepest parts of his bloodline, he felt an inexplicable fear welling up within him. Could it be that this humanoid creature was more terrifying than Ba before her? When this creature appeared, the mage's expression changed drastically. Fear was written all over her face. The shock she felt from Tang Wulin's display of his strength was suppressed this very instant. Currently, only fear was left in her heart. Mo Mai? Die, humans! Mo Mai's ice-cold voice resonated within the depths of Tang Wulin's soul. A light pattern appeared before her at the sound of her voice. Shortly after, Tang Wulin felt his body tense up. His life energy was depleting at an alarming rate. A dark green light pattern had appeared around him without him noticing it. It was swiftly soaking into his body. A curse-type ability? On Dolor continent, only the evil soul masters had similar soul skills. However, this creature which the Major referred to as Mo Mai was obviously not an evil soul master. Humph! Tang Wulin gave a snort. The bloodline vortex within him swirled wildly. The persistence in the depths of his heart united with his spiritual power. Moments after, a golden halo emerged from his body. The seven-colored gem on his wrist shone. A domineering thought rippled from him. Mo Mai grunted. The eerie green flames in his eyes flickered intensely. In the next instant, Tang Wulin charged out with lightning speed. He wielded his golden dragon spear and broke free from her curse forcibly. In that instant, he was charging right at her. Mo Mai flapped her wings behind her. She had produced a strange-looking weapon that resembled a bone or a battle knife, out of nowhere. She descended from above and slashed directly at Tang Wulin. Boom! Both of them collided. Tang Wulin was rudely flung to the ground from mid-air. Mo Mai also recoiled from the impact as she reeled backward for dozens of meters. Tang Wulin's gaze instantly turned grim. His opponent had a small build, yet she had such powerful strength. The more crucial factor was that he did not understand her. In the next instant, as Mo Mai retreated backward, her body suddenly flashed with light. The wings behind her flapped once again, and she appeared before Tang Wulin instantaneously. This video will end here. Like video and subscribe to my channel.